Ms. Jessica Tan.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the shared vision to take collective action and a whole-of-society approach towards making our society in Singapore a fairer and more inclusive one, where men and women partner as equals and can pursue our aspirations freely and to the fullest. We need to acknowledge the progress that Singapore women have made, and the journey continues. The White Paper covers 5 important areas affecting women's aspirations and development, with concrete recommendations for action. I would not be able to do justice to the work that has been done in all the areas covered in the White Paper, so I would like to focus my speech today on the areas of providing equal opportunities for women at the workplace. There are 4 points that I'd like to touch on. 1, why it is imperative for businesses to attract and retain women in the growth sectors. 2, the approach to flexible work arrangements. 3, the utilization of parental and paternity leave. And 4, mindset changes required. I welcome the new workplace fairness legislation to provide a safe environment for women and those facing discrimination or harassment at the workplace to speak up without fear. Having role models to inspire women and greater participation of women in leadership and board positions are important. Beyond these actions, I would like to bring attention to the need to attract, develop, and retain more women in the growth sectors. Why is this important? Growth sectors offer better job prospects, growth, and remunerations. If not as many women are participating in growth sectors, then eventually it would lead to a gap in the progress and development between women and men in the workplace. In Singapore, while the number of women in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEM sector, has increased to 32.4% in 2020, it is lower in comparison to other sectors. As companies push forward with their efforts to transform their businesses, and with the growing importance of technology in business, STEM roles will be in demand. More can be done to understand why women in STEM roles are lower than in other sectors, so that the appropriate actions can be taken in partnership with businesses to attract and retain more women to STEM roles. I'm not just saying that the companies need to hire more women. We need to make sure that women want to be in these roles. And we need to understand why they're not. It's increasing, but it's not there yet. Giving equal opportunity to women also have direct benefits for employers. The labor market is tight, and businesses are facing challenges in getting the talent they need. Data released last week by the Ministry of Manpower reported an increase in the number of job vacancies in Singapore. Job vacancies left unfilled for more than 6 months increased by 8% to 35%. A significant proportion of these vacancies are PMET jobs in growth sectors of information and communications, financial insurance services, professional services, health and social services. Women in Singapore are literate and educated. Since 1980, women make up 50% of the proportion of university graduates. In 2019, the number of women taking science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in our local universities was at 41%. It just makes good business sense for companies to hire women in STEM roles. If they do not, they are missing out on tapping on half the talent pool. Now let me touch on the approach to flexible work arrangements. Recognizing that women still tend to have the greater responsibility for caregiving, the White Paper has called for companies to provide flexible work arrangements to support more women to enter the workforce and progress. Work practices must be supportive of employees' needs, but we should recognize that business and operational considerations cannot be ignored. In order to provide good jobs, businesses must be able to operate effectively. I do agree with the balanced approach that White Paper is taking in advocating for employers to consider flexible work arrangements requests fairly and properly, while recognizing that flexible work arrangements are not an entitlement. The paper outlines that MOM will work with the tripartite partners to put in place a new set of tripartite guidelines by 2024, requiring employers to fairly and properly consider flexible work arrangement requests. My question is, why wait till 2024 to introduce a new set of tripartite guidelines? That would mean that it would be a year and a half before this happens. While I appreciate that time is needed to allow for consultation and to work on the new guidelines, if we believe that flexible work arrangements will enable fuller participation of women in the workforce, could we not start earlier and learn and refine from these experiences? Apart from the pace of the introduction of the tripartite guidelines for flexible work arrangements, I do want to highlight a few points on the approach to flexible work arrangements. For clarity, let me just refer to what we mean by flexible work arrangements. Taking what has been outlined in the tripartite standards for flexible work arrangements, it's defined as variations from usual work arrangements to include 1. Flexi-load, or example, part-time work or job sharing. 2. Flexi-time, which is staggered hours and compressed work weeks. Or 3. Flexi-place, example, telecommuting. So if any good has come out of the COVID-19 pandemic is that it showed that businesses and employees could pivot to the variations of flexible work arrangements. While there were initial challenges, there were real benefits of adopting flexible work arrangements for both businesses and workers. With flexible work arrangements, despite the restrictions, operations were able to continue. Work could be done, and jobs were retained. Beyond COVID, employers can also benefit directly from implementing flexible work arrangements to achieve productivity, to gain access to a larger talent pool. And I'm not talking about just women, men too, and to have business agility. So while not all work can adopt flexible work arrangements, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying everything has to be done in a flexible arrangements made for flexible work arrangements, and some cannot. But as we look to strengthening the guidelines for flexible work arrangements, I think more can be done to encourage business to review and incorporate flexible work arrangements as part of business norms, as there are real business benefits. The approach and mindset of how we implement flexible work arrangements will also set the tone and the culture in the workplace. I believe that for flexible work arrangements to be effective, it cannot be just about requiring employers to give fair evaluation and consideration to employees' requests for flexible work arrangements when they require it. This approach, while seen as supportive of employees' needs for balancing for their work-life responsibilities, does indirectly send a signal that flexible work arrangements is not the work norm or culture, and hence hesitation of both employers and employees to adopt flexible work arrangements. SMEs can also benefit from flexible work arrangements, and actually they stand to benefit more. But as we advocate for flexible work arrangements, we must recognize that for SMEs, they will require more support than larger organizations in the implementation of flexible work arrangements, as they have very lean HR teams, and they may not have the capacity. And there will be a lot of transition and transformation. Now let me move on to the next point of utilization of parental leave entitlements. I am supportive of the measures to encourage utilization of parental leave, as this will support employees, both men and women, in caregiving as parents. I fully support the drive for both men and women to be actively involved and share in the responsibilities as parents to care for their children, because I think that's a benefit to not just the sharing of load, but really benefit to families and also benefit to the children and society as a whole. But I want to make a point about maternity leave now. While the purpose of maternity leave is to allow women time to care and bond with a newborn child, let us not forget that maternity leave is also to allow time for women to rest and recover from the physical changes and strains that she went through in the 9 months of pregnancy as well as childbirth. I agree and encourage men to utilize their paternity leave so that they can share in the care of the child to allow mothers to recover well during their maternity leave. But let's not forget, when we talk about sharing of leave, sharing of time and all that, let's not forget women need to take care of themselves. Their bodies have gone through a lot, and both physically and mentally. I have 3 children, and I will tell you, I love all of them. My deliveries were very, very short. Barely, my third one was 15 minutes. But I will tell you, the 9 months was challenging. Your body just goes through a lot. And the afterbirth is tough. And so I would say to everyone, don't forget that, and women especially, don't forget that you need to take care of yourself. So while actions are important, let me now touch on an equally important point, my final point on mindsets. This is going to be fairly embarrassing for me, but I thought it would make the point because it's a personal story, so I'm going to share a personal story about mindsets. And many times we don't realize our own inherent and sometimes unrecognized stereotypes that we all hold. And I personally think that I try my hardest to be quite open. But the pin dropped for me one day. This was a few years ago, when I had a very important client, and we had arranged for technical briefings and very deep technology briefings for the client with very deep experts coming. And we came to a very important topic, and I was looking around the room and I said to my colleagues, where's the speaker? It's very important, and I was looking around and we were all looking for the speaker and the expert. And then finally I was told, oh, the speaker is in the room. And we looked around, and then I realized, oh dear, are you sure that's the speaker? Can you all please check? That's what I said to our team. And the speaker came on, spoke, and in my head, I thought it was going to be a disaster, or at least a mediocre session. But it turned out to be a very good session, because the speaker was a deep expert, and not only that, could actually relate it back to my client's business and relate it back a very deep technology area. So why is this embarrassing? Let me tell you this. In my head, I said that this person couldn't be the speaker. It wasn't a gender thing, but it was an age thing. I was looking for someone, because this topic was so complex, and it still is a very complex area, that I was looking, in my head, a deep expert had to be one that, looked the part. And the pin dropped for me because I was so embarrassed, and this happened many years ago. And I still cannot forget that, because it's a check for me to say that we don't think we are, we don't think it is, but we do it. We do it all the time. And that's why, beyond actions, I think mindsets are important. And I did a check yesterday, and this individual that I'm talking about, by the way, is world-renowned, and she's still doing very well. And she's one of world-renowned expert in this area, and she's doing very well in that area. But let me now come back to this point. Mr. Speaker, we all have mental models and biases. To realize the aspirations of enabling a fair and inclusive society for both women and men, to achieve our fullest potential and progress together, we must recognize the need to make mindset shifts, each and every one of us. And one of the important points of this white paper is that it is about all of us and not just about some of us. So I encourage all of us to move forward to achieve this aspiration that we have for all of us to realize our full potentials. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I support the white paper.